Hi, my name is Steven Schulteis, CBD advocate and founder of Steve's Goods. Our mission from the very beginning was to get the medicine to the people, and one of the ways we're doing that is with our Hemping Hands program. Now let's watch this testimonial and see how CBD is benefiting their lives.
My son Mai Rider was hit head-on by a drunk driver on Thanksgiving morning of 2016. We're coming on 3 years now since the accident. There was 126 miles of impact. The fact that he's alive is pretty incredible. They rushed him to the hospital. They had to, do the brain. They had to take pressure off his brain. He had multiple injuries and was in a medically induced coma. His friend died on the scene. When they finally were able to reach us, said that they would try to keep him alive as long as they could, which is a horrible thing to hear on Thanksgiving morning when you're supposed to be hosting for 40 of your family and friends. The fortunate thing, or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, is that he had not yet had seizures. But with traumatic brain injury, it's not a matter of if, it's when. So while we were grateful that he hadn't experienced seizures, he was still having severe neurostorms, which could be thought of as a seizure. So while he was at Craig, he was monitored. We were also able to, at a certain point, give him turmeric. They didn't allow us to do that right away because he was getting shots, Slovac shots, to keep him from blood clotting because of all the surgeries that he'd had. We had been looking at CBD all along from the very beginning. Unfortunately, as I said, in the medical world, they are not still really not very receptive to the use of CBD, even though there's no THC in most of them. They would not allow it. Even at Craig, they could not legally give us any guidance on that, whether or not that would be a good thing for Nash or not, just because not enough data had been collected, and still today not enough data has been collected. And there's so many companies and so many different levels. It's hard to know how to dose, and for a brain injury he needs an incredible amount more. The other issue that we ran into was that a lot of the products are only guaranteed results if they're taken sublingually. Well, Nash can't take things sublingually because he has lost the coordination to be able to swallow. So I make all of his food. We've also heard a lot of stories about people minimally conscious that have regained some consciousness and have even regained abilities. Now, whether or not that was the CBD in and of itself, or if it was other things that they were treating, it doesn't really matter, because there's nothing that could harm him through this. We've got nothing to lose. And we had to use the CBD so sparingly because it's so incredibly expensive, and obviously it's still not covered under insurance or available, for people that really need it, unless you've got that kind of income. It makes it very, very challenging to be able to the kind of results we were hoping. So Nash fortunately didn't have a seizure until October after his accident, which was almost a full year. He had returned to high school, but unfortunately he began to have seizures. His neurologist down at Craig discouraged us from putting him on anti-seizure meds right away. And we were grateful for that. He said if he starts to have them over and over again, and you're dealing with this once or twice a month, then that might be something to consider. About a month after he'd had his first seizure, had developed pneumonia pretty significantly and had probably the worst neurostorm of his life. We weren't sure he was going to make it home from that one. And then he started to have seizures more frequently, and it seemed to become kind of a cyclical thing. We drug our feet as long as we could, but we didn't want him to have seizures. So we thought that we would be a little bit more aggressive at this point with the CBD. And we had pursued another company to try to help us with this. But again, the amount that he needed for it to be a seizure preventative, to keep him off the anti-seizure meds, was not affordable for us. There was just no way that we could really be effective with our use of CBD at that time to make the cost of it. You know, there was just a lot of different components that we had to weigh at that time. But we also were trying to do what we could, because I had met Kylan at that point, to get him off the anti-seizure meds so that we could do a legitimate study to see that the CBD alone could control his seizures. Since then, we have been able to get them span out in a more of a 3-month cycle. So we're able to keep him out of the hospital and, you know, out of the emergency vehicles for at least 3 months at a time. And what's really cool now, I mean, which we can consider progress, is that it's been 7 months now since he's actually had a hospital stay. When he has seizures, it's usually because he's got a bug or he's had aspiration pneumonia. I stopped counting how many times he's had aspiration pneumonia, and I stopped counting the number of antibiotics cycles that he'd been on at 42, and that was 8 months in. Our hope with Steve's Goods is to have less incidents of illness, of aspiration pneumonia, of him to be able to build the awareness that he needs to be able to swallow better in his feeding therapies, to be able to maybe administer these things sublingually, to maybe get him to be able to eat for pleasure and not have to be fed by a G-tube. And I believe that is a real and true possibility. Eventually, our hope is to get him off the anti-seizure meds, because what we've learned, I mean, I look back at pictures and I look back at videos of when he was at Craig, and even then, you know, 6 months outside of his injury, he had more awareness than he does now. That first day, he, you know, when he woke up, his eyes were bright, they were clear, they were looking at me. He was tracking me. I felt like he was posturing toward me. He had more wake time that day than he has had, at least in the last year. The other thing that we noticed today was that his participation in his occupational therapy was probably the best to date. He, you know, we always ask him to do things, you know, roll over or, you know, lift your hand or, you know, whatever. And he didn't lift his hand, but he did roll onto his back from his side, which is phenomenal. I mean, he used his own weight and he did it more than once. You know, you've got nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose. There's no harm that can be done by it, and why wouldn't you? You know, if it could improve your health even just a little bit, if it could take away your pain, allow you to sleep a full night, you know, take down inflammation. I own a Pilates studio, and I have numerous clients that have had amazing results with CBD oil, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, just sciatica, chronic low back pain, migraine headaches has been a biggie. I've got 3 clients that are now using CBD that have had phenomenal results with their migraines, which, you know, I always attributed to diet and different things and just lifestyle. I can't trivialize migraines in particular because I don't have any real experience with them. But just based on the people that I know that experience them, I know there's a constellation of things that they are battling that probably bring those things on. And I think about Nash, you know, having endured the level of brain injury that he has, both to predominantly his left side, but his right also. He's got to have a whopper of a headache, you know, even 3 years out. He can't tell me that, but I just can't imagine, you know. I think probably, you know, part of his positioning and the way that his head is largely because it's painful for it to be any other way. You do have a choice. You can circle the drain, and you can give up. It's a lot easier to do that, to walk away, because I think when you can find that space of bliss, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through movement, whether it's through just prayer, that will change your life. It's impossible to have a bad day. It really is. It's impossible to have a bad day if if you wake up grateful that you have, you have been given this day to do something.